Right. We are going to begin. Here we go. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone that's in the room. Good evening, everyone online. Good evening, everyone on Zoom. Hello to everybody. But whatever way you could make it, glad you're here. Let's pray. Abba, Father, we love you and your word. And we are honored that you allow us and call us that we might be yours. And as we read your word and think about your word, we ask that you enlighten us and help us know what it means in our lives. And we bless you tonight. Amen.
You had your eyes closed. I thought this was the new way.
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't.
I always bend in the middle.
You never know.
When I pray. Always bent at the
Okay. That was it. Because Mark is here, right there, in front of me. No, that is not it at all. All right, how many of you read the reading from Numbers? How many of you remember the Hebrew name of Numbers, the book of Numbers? Bamidbar. And what does Bamidbar mean? In the wilderness. So that means the real name of the book of Numbers is not Numbers. Okay, that is a much later invented name by Christianity, because they thought that was a good name because it begins with a bunch of numbers. But the book is not all about numbers. The book is about Israel in the wilderness on their way to the land. And that's what we learned, all right? And those of you that are new, what we're doing every year is we are following along with the Torah readings that would be in any Jewish synagogue. And we're reading it and we're learning a little bit more every year. And this week's reading in Hebrew is pronounced how? Yes, you got it real loud. Say it real loud. Okay, hukat, not chukat. Okay? Whenever you're reading Hebrew words and you have a CH, remember it's okay? Like you, but you don't. Okay? That's that. Now, what letter would that be in Hebrew? The het. Okay? Het. I'm getting things on my mic. So this is why I'm distanced, because I'm speaking some Hebrew. All right? Now, as you know, most English Bibles translate the word Torah as law, okay, which is a very bad translation. It does not mean law. So when you hear and when you read and when you go to Bible.org and all of that, and it divides the Bible up and it says, this is the law, it's like, no, it's not the law. It's Torah. What does that word mean? What does Torah mean? Teachings and instructions and guidance on how you live your life. That's what that word means. Okay? It is, if you look at it this way, hi, how are you? It's good to see you. It is practical heavenly instruction for Yehovah's people on earth. and there's a lot that we do and we have gone over about, well, does that mean that it's for Christians? Well, are you one of God's people? Then why wouldn't it be? Well, I thought that was removed and we didn't have to do that anymore. Well, then you need to go back and read the Gospels. Because in the Gospels, Jesus, Yeshua, was very plain. Do not think that I am here to do away with the Torah or the prophets. Okay? And we all know that Yeshua lived his life as a Torah-obedient Jew. And but we'll learn more about that Friday night. Now, this is interesting. I thought I'd put this in the notes. You may have heard of Rambam. It would really be Rambam. Okay? Rambam was a famous rabbi in the Middle Ages, okay, whose real name was Moshe ben Maimon. All right? Among the Jewish people, he was known as Rambam, which is an acronym for Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon. Rambam. Or as most English-speaking people say it incorrectly, Rambam. Because it's easier, because it looks English, and it reminds me of when I was growing up, we had Fred and Wilma Flintstone, and Barney Rubble, and Barney had a little boy, and his name was Bam Bam, because he had a bat, and he would go around, bam, bam, bam. I love those shows. I miss those. Anyway, Rambam is maybe the most well-known rabbi in Judaism, okay? And he wrote a lot, and sometimes things that we'll read are notes from Rambam. But remember, because he is a famous Jewish rabbi, does not mean that he's always right, any more than it means I'm always right. He's a man just like you and me, okay? And, you need to remember that you have these religions that developed. One of them is Judaism. The other one is Christianity. Both of them have a lot of rules and beliefs and laws and things like that that are not in the Bible, okay? They're their own ways of doing things, and you better not go against those, or it might be trouble. Okay, so it was Rambam who came up with the list that there are 613 principles in Torah. Okay, and the way he divided it up, there were 248 positive ones, you shall, okay, and there were 365 negative ones. The 248, in his mind, equaled the number of bones in the human body, which is what they believed in his day. Okay? The other 365, obviously, he believed were connected to the fact that there are 365 days in a year. And to me, that's like, I don't know about that, Rambam. I mean, that's very interesting, but I don't know how relevant that is, okay? What we need to remember is that a lot of these principles, some of them even rules, in Torah are not for everybody. Now, is Torah in general for everybody? Yes. Are the 10 Commandments for everybody? Yes. Okay? But a lot of the rest of them are principles or rules that are for men, only men. Some of them are only women. Some of them are only Levites. Some of them are only valid if you are in Israel. Some of them are only valid if you're in Jerusalem, in the temple. Okay? And sometimes when people don't know and all they have learned is what has been regurgitated of, well, you're not under the law anymore. Well, you don't need the law anymore. Well, that's just only history, yada, yada. They don't realize that it's divided up like that. So they'll go and they'll take a law or a rule or whatever, and they'll go, well, are you going to do that? And I'm like, no, I can't do that because I'm not in Israel. Okay? So the more you know it and the more you read it, the more your mind begins to divide it up into these. These are for everyone. These are for the Levites. These are for men, and on down the line. Okay? Now, there are, as well as there being different rules, there are in Hebrew, in the Torah, there are different names or categories of principles. Okay? And you can read about that in Deuteronomy. I realize Deuteronomy is not in our reading, but this is one of the best verses for you to be able to look at these words, the different words. Okay, Deuteronomy 5, verse 28. As for you, stand here by me, and I will tell you the whole commandment, both the statutes and the ordinances that you are to teach them, and you will do them in the land I am giving them to possess. Okay, so there's 3 words there: commandment, statutes, and ordinances. In Hebrew, there are 3 different words. Commandment is mitzvah. Say that with me. Mitzvah. Okay? If you have more than one, they're mitzvot. Okay, so mitzvah is one, mitzvot is more than one, plural. These are considered a work of righteousness, a good work or a good deed. Usually a mitzvah is connected with an act of goodness and charity. Mitzvah. Okay? Now, these words are, even though they have different categories, sometimes they're interchangeable. Like in general, sometimes all of the commandments are known, hi Larry, are known as the mitzvot. Are you going to do the mitzvot? That means do the commandments. And notice when I use the word work of righteousness, that doesn't mean a work that earns you righteousness. It means a work that those who are righteous do. See the difference? That's one of the arguments that is used a lot about, well, we don't need to keep Torah because we're saved by grace. And yes, but it's always been that way. Abraham was saved by grace. Adam was saved by grace. It's always been that way. Okay, if you asked any Jew, and a Jew that lived in Jesus, in Yeshua's day, and you asked, well, do you believe that you work your way to heaven with your deeds of righteousness? They'd be like, no. It doesn't work that way. Okay, God is the one who delivers us. All right? Then what is a work of righteousness? A work of righteousness and the works of Torah and the works of the 10 Commandments are what righteous people do. So it's more like, this is your identity. It's more like you have a dad whose name is Yehovah, and he has invited you into his house. And you're like, well, what do I need to give you in order to get in my house? And he's like, well, you don't need to give me anything. You don't have anything to give me except your life. Okay? I gave my son, Yeshua, that you might be forgiven and gained access into my house. So you go into the house. Now, these are the rules of the way we live in my house. So you can think of Torah as the rules of God's house. This is how I want you to live your life. So, okay, so that's the one word, mitzvah. The next word, which is the name of our reading this week, is that one that's really hard to pronounce. It's chukim, or chukah. Okay? A chukah is one. A chukim is plural. That's a very interesting word that we translate in English as statutes. Yes. Chukah. Yes. Okay? The literal meaning of the Hebrew word is an image. Okay, well that's interesting. How would a commandment of God be an image, and why would that be related in the meaning of a word? Because these are ways that you reflect the image of God, whom you are made in his image. Okay, those who are made in his image do these deeds. Okay, and we're going to learn about some of them tonight in those deeds. Okay, they are created and they are made in order to create a lasting impression on us that reflects the glory of God. In other words, you learn something about your Father by doing these. So, okay, the next word in English is ordinances. In Hebrew is mishpat, which is plural is mishpatim. Okay, and it means deliverances, rulings, or legal judgment or civil law. All right? Now, beginning at the beginning of our reading tonight, which is a very strange reading if you read it. And if you've never read it, you go back and read it, mark my words, you're going to think, well, that's just bizarre. Okay, what God was having them do. But it begins, Numbers 19 begins. Adonai, by the way, let me address what you're reading in the Tree of Life version there. Okay, I've used the word Yehovah, I've used the word God, I've used the word Lord, I've used the word Yahweh, I've used all these words. So who in the world do we mean? Try not to confuse anybody, and for everybody else it'll be a reminder. The Jews in just after Yeshua's day, the leaders of Judaism, does anybody remember what leaders won the battle for Judaism? They were the only ones left. You had the scribes and the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Essenes and all of them. Which group won? Right, Pharisees. They are the ones that basically invented the Judaism that exists right now, today, because they won. So Judaism today is basically Pharisaic Judaism. Okay? Now, in that inventing of the religion, one of the things that they did was they removed the name. So in Hebrew, the name is 4 letters, right? What are they? Yod, He, Vav, He. Okay? They did not want anybody to write or pronounce the name. Why? Because what? Okay, because to them it was sacred. What else? There's other reasons. Why are people calling me now? I purpose and I choose. Thank you very much. I forgive. Which what? Which battle? Oh, there's hundreds of them. The battle for which group in the day of Jesus, which group of Jews were going to be the leaders of the Jews. And you had all of these groups, and you read about them in the Gospels. Sadducees, Pharisees, scribes, Essenes, zealots. All of those are in the Gospels. Yes. And the wouldn't sees and the couldn't sees, yeah. And the group that, and the reason they won is they were the only ones left. Because all the other groups got, they met their demise at the hands of the Romans. Or they left. So They were the only ones that were left. So anyway, in this religion, in the name, so it's sacred name. So for that reason, they didn't want to pronounce it. And what is the third commandment? Don't bring the name of God to naught, okay? Or take the name in vain. So they didn't want to do that either, okay? And yet there's this bizarre twist, because in Exodus, when the name was given to Moses, right? Yehovah, he said, this is my name that I want to be remembered by forever. So how can you be remembered by his name if you remove his name? How can he be remembered, right? So anyway, that's the Jewish end of it. So what they did was they came up with a word that they use. They actually have more than one, but the main one is Adonai. Adonai is a Hebrew word that means master. Okay? Now, the English Bible, they followed this. Only they used the word Lord. And they made it in all capital letters to remind you this is the 4-letter name of Lord. And Lord is not a name. So anyway, that's why in that Bible you're reading Adonai. Okay? So Adonai spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, this is the chukah of the Torah, which Adonai commanded, saying, speak to Bnei Yisrael, that they bring you a flawless red heifer, on which there is no blemish, and on which there has never been a yoke. Okay? So this is a chukah. What does that mean? Okay, but remember the Hebrew meaning of that word. This is something that is going to reflect the image of God in this commandment. Okay? Now, something else about these commandments that are known as chukah are that they do not always make logical sense. And if you remember, we have a Hebrew way of thinking, a worldview, okay? And then we have a Greek/Roman way of thinking, worldview. What are we in America? We are as Roman as Romans, Greek-Roman. It's everything is logic and reason, okay? So that means if let's just imagine this, and I'm going to go ahead and pick up on the food list. What is food and what isn't in Leviticus? Okay? So I'm sitting here with a brother, and he orders bacon and eggs, and I order eggs. Okay? And he goes, oh, don't you like bacon? And I go, well, I don't eat bacon. And he goes, oh, are you allergic? Which the easiest thing to do at that point would be go, yes. And then you can move on with your life. But no, I say, no, I eat by the list in Leviticus in the Bible. Well, why do you do that? It's because God said this is the way to eat for people that are his, so I thought that'd be a good idea. Well, there's nothing wrong with bacon. Science has proven that the bacon that we eat is, healthy-ish. It has, this and this and that. And by the way, that was given back in the day when they didn't have refrigerators. And now we have refrigerators. So that means that we don't need to follow that anymore, yada, 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 yada. Now, listen to me. If you eat bacon, you are not going to hell for eating bacon. I don't want you to think. This has nothing to do, very little to do, with whether or not you are a follower of Yeshua. Although it might, once you hear it revealed. Okay? Whether or not it's good for you, whether or not it's healthy, whether or not you know the reason why God wants you to do it, is irrelevant. In the Hebrew mind, they want to know, what do I do in order to love God? Give me something to do. Okay? So they ask, what? In the Greek Roman mind, what do they ask? Why? Okay? So you need to realize that in the Hebrew mind, in the Hebrew Bible, in the days of Moses, they weren't going around going, well, Moses, why? Why do we need to do that? Moses it's like the old bumper sticker, okay? And I hate to use bumper stickers because I don't like bumper sticker theology. But there was an old bumper sticker, and it was, God said it, I believe it, that settles it. Unfortunately, most people who had that bumper sticker didn't do what God said. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, okay. All right, now, we need to remember that our God is not a man, okay? We are made in his image, but that means we are made as a small reflection of the light that he is, and we're made in order so that we're able to do things that he does, like he forgives. Can you do that? Yes. Okay? Things like that. That's what it means to be made in his image. It doesn't mean eyes, nose, hands, blah, blah, blah. That's not what it means in Hebrew, okay? So we're made in his image that we might relate to him and reflect him in our actions. But we need to remember, and this is something that we do not remember anymore in our culture, and I mean even in Christianity. We don't really have the feeling, I guess, that, you know what? He is over me. He's God. I am not. I don't know why some of the things that are in there are in there. As I follow more and more, I learn more and more about why they're in there. All right? But at the beginning, I don't know. You know, one day when I was looking at this whole what you eat thing, and I looked at that, and I remember debating with my wife, because we were once doing the South Beach diet. And on it, you were recommended to eat bacon and shrimp and things like that. And for me, that was great, because where I grew up, if it was in the water, you eat it. Ooh, it's all slimy. Oh, those are good, you know. But not on the list. And I was debating this, and I was like, so one day I was having a debate with God, which is not always a good idea, but sometimes, right? And I was like, I don't get it. Why? Why is this in there? Why do you want me to eat this way? And I got what I believe is an answer. He said, because when you eat your way, to me it's gross. Yeah. But I want to know why, you know, just like a little boy looking at why? Why can I not run out there? Right? And that's when I began to realize I had been relating to God almost like he was a robot. Okay? Almost like he was this big robot up there who had this list of things that he would do and things that he would give, and it was almost like if you stick your money in there right, you'll get what you want, and yada. And I never realized that he has emotions. Well, in Genesis 6, he was grieved. So when you begin to realize that, you're like, wait a minute, this is a living being who says to his people that he brought out of Egypt, hey, you guys, this is what I want you to eat. So I was like, oh, okay. Now, this next ceremony that we're going to read, and I might not read all of this, I may just go into it and explain it because it's long. This is one of, if not the oddest ceremonies that I've ever read about. Okay? And it's about what is known as the Red Heifer, which is a what? A cow. Okay? So he goes on into this, and basically what this is about is when you have touched a dead body, okay, you are unclean. This is a way to get rid of that uncleanness for being near or touching a dead body. Now, for a Christian to grasp the whole idea of clean and unclean may be years trying to figure that out, because we don't have anything like that. Sometimes we think unclean means you've done something wrong. Not always. If you have a baby, you're unclean. For how long? 80 days if it's a girl, 40 days if it's a boy. Or something like that. Okay? And so immediately, if I'm a girl, I'm like, well, why do we get penalized double? Well, there you go with the whys. Okay, but I have an idea about why. And we already dealt with that in Leviticus. Does anybody remember? Why was it more? Why was it the period of uncleanness was more and longer if the woman had a girl than if the woman had a boy? Anybody remember? Because if you bring a girl into the world, you are bringing more than one life. You are bringing a womb, another womb into the world. And it's not a way of saying that women are, they're going to be dirty. No, clean and unclean, don't equate it with dirty and not dirty. Okay? It simply means in an unclean condition, you're not allowed to go into the zone in the tabernacle where things happened. Okay? So another thing to realize is in Torah, there are zones of holiness where you're allowed to enter. If you enter into the wrong zone, it's dangerous. Okay? You might die by entering into the wrong zone. Why? He's God. He's holy. Okay? He is, we're made in His image, but He's not like us. So He's giving them instructions so that they won't die. Some of them did not follow those instructions. And what happened? Zzz. Right? Okay. So, now, Jewish rabbis forever have been puzzled by what this means, this ceremony. We're going to look at it a little more in a minute. As a matter of fact, there's a famous rabbi who I believe is alive today, whose name is Rabbi Yochanan, and his words are, "By your lives I swear, the corpse does not have the power by itself to defile, nor does the mixture of ash and water have the power by itself to cleanse. The truth is that the purifying power of the red cow is a decree from the Holy One. The Holy One said, I have set it down as a statute. I have issued it as a decree. You are not permitted to transgress my decree. This is the ritual law." Now, something that they didn't know. What is it that, in general, Judaism today, Jews today don't recognize that you do? Messiah. They don't recognize who Yeshua is. This is a ceremony that's another angle of looking at what Messiah did on our behalf. Okay? He cleansed us from death. This is all about death. What happens why is death unclean? Because death is unclean to God. It's not how He designed us. It certainly isn't how he is designed. Okay? So anything related to death is not allowed to be in the presence. Okay? So that's why a woman during her monthly period is unclean. Well, how is what's going on in the woman relating to death? Yeah, the egg. Okay, it's being ejected. There's a death-ishness about it, and he doesn't want anything to do with that. Okay? So, in Ephesians, Paul, the Jewish rabbi, writes, Messiah did this so that he might present to himself in his glorious community, his glorious community, not having stain or wrinkle or any such thing, but in order that she might be holy and blameless. Okay, Messiah was holy and blameless, right? Did he ever do anything against Torah? No, because if he did, he couldn't be Messiah. Okay? So, the red heifer and the ceremony about it was a way to decontaminate someone who had been unclean by contact with a dead corpse or by being near a corpse or touching someone who had been near a corpse. And here's how it worked. Here's the formula for the liquid that they're going to make, that they're going to pour into water so that the individual will be clean. Okay? A priest would take an unused cow that was perfect in every way. Okay? And it had to be red. Why red? Yes. So he had to take this red cow and he had to take it outside the camp. Well, why? What does that mean? How is that related to anything? Why take it out there? I don't know, but this is what we're going to do. Take it out there. So they took it out there, and then they would kill the animal. The way they, by the way, did that in all of the sacrifices, do you know how they killed the animal? Right there. Okay? Why? Bleed them out like that, they die almost instantly. There's like no pain, no, oh my goodness, I'm dying. It just, and you're gone. Okay? So that means that that's a very humane way of doing away with an animal. Notice it's not take the animal and cut the head off, or take the animal and stab it in the eyes and then in the belly, and then like they did in other religions and some of the things that they did. Okay, so then they would gather some of the blood into this cup. Okay, then they would turn and face the door of the sanctuary that was in the tabernacle. Later, it would be the what? Temple. Okay, so they would do that, all right, which means, by the way, wherever they were outside the camp, they had to have an eye shot into that door that went into the temple or tabernacle. Are you getting it? Okay, starting to come up? Yes, of Jerusalem. Yes, just exactly. That's what this is about. Okay, then he would sprinkle the blood 7 times towards the holy place, and next the whole cow would be burned up on a mound. Okay, while it was burning, the priest would throw into the fire a hunk of wood, cedar wood, a hunk of hyssop, which was a plant. By the way, where else was that used in the Bible? The hyssop. In Exodus, to put the blood of the lamb on the door of your house, okay? They used the hyssop. And a red-colored thread to be burned up with it. Where else in the Bible is there a red thread? Okay, yeah, well, that's the name of the book, by the way, the scarlet thread of redemption. But there's a literal thread mentioned. Yes, Rahab. Yeah, they said to her, if you don't want to die, let this scarlet thread be hanging out of your window, and then when we arrive to get rid of all the bad guys, we won't get rid of you. Well, that might be a little bit symbolic as well. Okay? Anyway, now, as he was doing this, all of this would make the priest unclean while he was doing it. So then he had to bathe in water. And whoever helped him with this also became unclean and also had to bathe. Okay? Then next, a man who was clean, all right, and had not been done any of these other things, because that would make him unclean, he then was to gather up the ashes and put them in a designated place. All right? And then he was to combine the ashes with living water. Water that comes out of a river or a spring and is always moving, not like a lake where it doesn't move. Okay? He would combine them with this living water, and it would make this liquid which was used whenever anybody was in contact with the dead. But when he carried the ashes to make the mixture, he also became unclean, and then he had to wash. Okay? Now, this act of being in contact with the dead is the highest form of ritual impurity or uncleanness. Of all of the other ways, this is the granddaddy. Okay? And the reason is, because there's a reason, God wants us to know that death is contaminating. It's wrong. That's a big deal. Whoa. In God's eyes, death is, well, what did the devil, what did Jesus, Yeshua, what did he say the devil does on earth? He kills. Okay? Death is the devil's number one tool. And Paul wrote to the Corinthians that death is an enemy. It's the last enemy that will be destroyed. Did Yeshua destroy death? Did he destroy it in his own life? Yes, he did. Okay, and if you let him, he'll destroy it in your life as well. Okay, so hallelujah for that. The last enemy to be destroyed. Okay, now, the way that you got clean was by taking this mixture and sprinkling it on the house or the tent of the body of the deceased and on whomever had contacted or contracted with the dead. Okay, and the sprinkling happened twice. Okay, it happened on the third day after the defilement, and then it happened on the seventh day after the defilement. Okay? Something else that is unique about this ceremony, okay, is that everybody who does this, the guy who goes out, sacrifices the animal, the guy who burns the animal, the guy who gathers the ashes of the animal, all of them do their job, even though they know that by doing their job, which will bring cleanness to everybody else, they're going to become unclean in order to do it. Yes. Yeah. Everybody who So by doing something good, they became unclean. Well, that's interesting. Did Yeshua ever do that? Did Jesus ever do something that would make him unclean? Okay, he died for us. What else? Touched a leper. Okay. Okay, now, let's look at the parallels of this, if you haven't already figured them out. Okay, one is the cow had to be without blemish, spotless and without blemish. That means without fault. Okay, and Yeshua was without blemish because he never what? Sinned. By the way, in the Bible, what is sin anyway? Yes. Go ahead. Yeah, well, anything that goes against God's will, but how do you know what God's will is? You do. You were almost there. Go ahead. How do you know? How do you know? Okay, if you read in the New Testament letters, those little itty-bitty books that are at the back of the New Testament, and one of them named 1 John, there's a verse says, sin is disobeying Torah. Okay? In English it reads, sin is being lawless or disobeying the law. But we already know in English that's Torah. That's God's definition of what sin is. So if it isn't in Torah as a forbidden act, then it's not sin. Okay, anyway. Okay, so he never did that. So that's number one. Okay, this cow had to be killed outside the camp. Okay, do you know the Mount of Olives is not in the region of where the camp would have been around the tabernacle? It's outside. Furthermore, from where it is, which is not, if you visited it and you visited where he supposedly died in Israel, you have been to the wrong location. Okay? Yeah. There's a lot of things like that over there. Okay. Where he would have been, there's a bridge that goes out of the temple, and it goes all the way out to the Mount of Olives. Okay? Do you know what the name of the bridge is? The Red Heifer Bridge. Why? Because when they made the heifer juice, they developed a bridge, because the bridge goes over the I think it's the valley of Gehenna, which is the valley where the burning and all that was, and they would go over there and they would do their ceremony. And from where they did it, Mount of Olives would be right here. From the Mount of Olives, you can look directly into the temple where the door is to get in. Okay? That's pretty amazing. The blood was sprinkled in the direction of the holy place. Yeshua's blood was our acceptable sacrifice for us. Okay? The one who killed it had to look. I already brought that one up. Okay? By the way, when you read in Matthew about the curtain or the veil of the temple being split, do you want to know a little? Can I take a little rabbi trail on that one? Okay. In the Hebrew version of Matthew, it's not the veil that was split. It's the pillars that held up the veil that cracked and fell over, thus bringing the veil down with it. And by the way, the veil was not the veil over the Holy of Holies. It was the veil that separated the Jews and the Gentiles. Okay, that's the veil that went down. And the reason it went down is there was an earthquake. which is mentioned in Matthew, and it destroyed those pillars that held the veil up. And you know what else it destroyed when it did? The offices of the religious leaders in the temple. That's pretty amazing. Okay? All right, that's a rabbi trail. That's the one. That's the one. Okay? So that means that now anybody can enter into the veil. What happens? What does that mean? Does that mean anybody can enter into the Holy of Holies? Or does that mean anybody can enter into the worship of Yehovah? That's what that means. Okay? And to the Jews, that's like the main radical argument or whatever in the whole New Testament is, what do we do with the Jews and the Gentiles? What do we do with that mix? Paul and all the apostles, they want to bring them all together. Okay? But the Jews didn't want it, and the Romans didn't want it. So the Jews made their own, and the Romans made their own. So you have Judaism and Christianity. Well, what does that make us? Neither. Followers of the way. Right? I mean, really. Confused. It makes everybody else confused. I know that. Because of religion. Okay, you have cedar thrown into the mix. Wood. Okay, wood and Yeshua nailed to a wooden stake. Okay, you have hyssop reminding you of the blood of the lamb that's used on the door. You have the red thread reminding you that your sins are as crimson, but they will be white as snow. Okay? By the way, in Hebrews, the writer of Hebrews writes that we have a high priest over God's household. Excuse me. So let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, with hearts sprinkled what? Clean from an evil conscience and body washed with pure water. So why don't we do that now? Why don't we wash in order to be in the presence of Yehovah? Because you're already washed. Who washes you? Yeshua. What was it that came out when he died? Blood and water. Okay, blood atones, water cleanses. So he did both of that if you let him. So, thank God for that. By the way, what about the living water? Is there any relationship to the living water? Yeah, like when Yeshua said, I am the living water. Okay? Or I'll give you living water, right? So it's all related. Okay, that's that one. That's enough on that one. You can go read up more about it. There's articles online. Some of them are good and helpful. There's more that I didn't go into, but we can't go there in the time we have. Did you have a hand up? A question? Question?
Yeah, about the water, I think in the most holy, not in the most holy, but in the holy of holies, wherever they had the basin with water, that water they have in there, is that to wash after they do the red heifer?
No, that's in order, that's that the priests may wash. They had to wash in that every day. Okay, because they were in the holy zone where they had to do that every day. And then it developed in their religious life that everyone wanted to do that. They wanted to be mikvad or washed. So, cool.
That's the form of baptism is just about
Yes, it's well, if you remember the baptism of Jesus when he was baptized, people want to know why. He never did anything wrong. Why would he be immersed? Does anybody remember what was going on when he was immersed? Yeah, by his cousin John. And what was John in Israel?
He was like the head of baptism.
Oh, he was. He was what? He was the rightful high priest. Because the one they had was not lawful. He wasn't even a Levite. John was. His dad was a Levite. Okay? So what John was doing in the immersion, he was anointing him as king of Israel. Right? Okay. All right, let's move on. Because I know we have a lot more. We have a lot more. Okay, so next we have the water from the rock. Okay, where once again they run out of water. Okay, so you read in Numbers 20, verse 1, in the first month. Stop right there. What month is that? Month number 1, Nisan. Okay, it's the month of what? Holy Day. First fruits, unleavened bread, and Passover are all in that month. Okay? In that month, the entire community of Bnai Israel arrived at the wilderness of Zin. The people stayed at Kadesh. There, Miriam died and was buried. Now, there was no water for the community, so they assembled against Moses and Aaron. Okay, this is ongoing. It's been ongoing in Torah that the community gets worried, and then they gang up on Moses and Aaron, and they want to do away with them. So once again, they don't have any water. Okay? Now, here's what I want you to notice, is that when Adonai speaks to Moses, he says, take the staff, gather the assembly, you and your brother Aaron, speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will give out its water. It is the rock, not a rock. So it's not just any rock. It's a special rock. But they're not near Mount Horeb. Mount Horeb is where the original rock was, where they drew water, okay, and he struck the rock, remember, and the water gushed out. Now, his words are not strike the rock, but do what? Speak to the rock. Okay? Well, what happened? Well, Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly in front of the rock. He said, listen now, you rebels. Must we bring you water from this rock? Then Moses raised his arm and struck the rock twice with his staff. Water gushed out, and the community and its livestock drank. Okay. Now let's get a little bit of the background behind all of this, okay? In Jewish tradition, there's a tradition known as Miriam's well, okay? What happened to Miriam at the beginning of this chapter? She died. Miriam died. There was a rock that was known as Miriam's well, and the rock went with them. So it wasn't like, I've seen the pictures of the big rock there in Arabia at where Mount Sinai is. I've seen the pictures of that big rock. That rock didn't go with them. That rock is like a mountain. That'd be like taking flat top with you wherever you went. Okay? So, my question is, if this is what really happened, then where'd they get this rock? okay, known as Miriam's well. Well, there's a Rabbi Hadley, who wrote about this, and I think it's interesting. He says, without water, life cannot survive. Nonetheless, millions of Jewish people survived in the parched and barren desert for 40 years. How was this possible? Only through a miracle. During their travels through the desert, the Jewish people were accompanied by a rock from which an abundant supply of water constantly flowed. It was called Miriam's well because it existed in the merit of Moses' older sister Miriam, who was a righteous woman and a prophetess in her own right. She was a righteous woman. She was a woman, tzedek, righteous. Okay, but, and she was a prophetess. Did she ever do anything wrong? Yeah. She kept one up Moses and Aaron. Okay, well, thank God that everybody does something wrong, because then I don't feel so bad. Okay, so in this week's portion, we read about Miriam's death, only months before the entry of the Jewish people into the Holy Land. Torah also tells us that Miriam's well ceased to function after she died, and the people were faced with a critical water shortage. Now, hold on, Rabbi. The Torah does not give us all of those little details. So what I want to know is, which Torah do you mean? Do you mean the written one or the oral one? Okay? Because the Jews, they have a belief that the oral Torah was given on the mountain when the written Torah was, and the oral one was in here and handed down generation after generation, so the Gentiles wouldn't get it. So, I don't know, I have a bit of a disagreement with that idea. But anyway, you have this rock. And they besieged Moses and demanded that he provide the water for them, for otherwise they would die. God told Moses, take his staff in his hand, speak to the rock. Instead of speaking, however, Moses struck the rock twice. The waters gushed forth again, but Moses forfeited the opportunity for entering the Holy Land. Okay? Now, we already noticed that it was in the month of Passover. Okay? Jewish tradition says that Miriam died on Nisan 10, which would have been 5 days prior to Passover, which, if this is the right date, it would mean that Moses and Aaron were unable to participate. Why? Because they were unclean because of Miriam's body. Okay? And this comes right next to the section on the Red Heifer, all about death and uncleanness. It's just interesting. Okay? Now, here's something else. If they were cleansing with the Red Heifer, it would have been 7 days. Right? Okay? They couldn't participate in Passover because they wouldn't be clean until Nisan 17, which is the exact day the water came from the rock in Jewish tradition. That's the same day that Yeshua was resurrected. So Moses strikes the rock. He wasn't supposed to strike it this time, okay, but speak to it, and the water gushed out of the rock, okay? On the day, thousands of years later, when Yeshua, the living water, gushed out of the rock, the tomb wherein he lay, okay? Now, I've had people that, like, when I ask, why wasn't he allowed to go into the land? Well, because he got angry. No, that's not why he wasn't allowed to go into the land. Yehovah got angry with Israel, didn't he? I mean, once he looked down and he was like, Moses, get out of the way. I think we read about this last week in the reading. Moses, get out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and wipe him out and start over with you. You're going to be another Noah. Right? And Moses and Aaron were like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. So that's not the reason. Here's the reason, okay? Number one, back when they first were without water, his directions were strike the rock once. Bam! He strikes the rock. Now, the rock has already been struck. So you don't need to strike the rock again. Just speak to it, and the living water will come out of the rock. Okay? So what does that mean? Well, if you read Numbers 20:12, when Moses wanted to know why am I not allowed to go into the land? It says this, but Adonai said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not trust in me so as to esteem me as holy in the eyes of Bnei Yisrael, and therefore you will not bring this people into the land. Okay? Well, add this to this whole background. You have Paul's words to the Corinthians that when Israel was in the desert, they were drinking from a spiritual rock that followed them. And that rock was Messiah. Okay? The rock was Messiah. So the fact that Moses struck it again, and not once but twice, means the whole picture that God was setting up, Moses screwed it up. He messed it up. So he gave them the wrong picture of Messiah, which apparently was really important to Yehovah because he does it over and over and over and over again. Yes. It would be like, you know what? Well, I need some living water. I guess I better go back to the cross and strike him dead again. No, you don't need to do that. Speak through him. Why? Because he's alive. He's right here. He's alive. So all of that out of this, I think it's just amazing. Okay, we got one more. One more very unusual one. This one is digging for gold. Okay? Because once again, we find Israel grumbling and complaining again. And in Numbers 21, it says they spoke against God and Moses and said, why have you brought us from Egypt to die in the wilderness? Because there's no bread, there's no water, and our very spirits to test this despicable food. So Adonai sent poisonous serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and many of the people of Israel died. What? Okay. Well, once again, Israel changes their mind and repents and cries out, help! Okay, we're dying here. We need help. Okay, so here is the help from the Lord. Adonai said to Moses, make yourself a fiery snake and stick it on a pole. Whenever everyone who has been bitten will look at it, he will live. So Moses made a bronze snake and put it on a pole. And it happened that whenever a snake bit anyone and he looked at the bronze snake, he lived. Okay, so first of all, realize doing something like this was not unusual in other cultures in the ancient Near East. They made amulets. They made charms out of, there was one that if you got bit by a scorpion, the witch doctor would give you a necklace of a scorpion. And that supposedly would remove the venom or something. But this is something completely different. Now remember, there are similarities in the religion of Yehovah and the religion of the religions that are out there, other religions. Okay, But they're always there, and they're always given in order to undo the other gods. Right? Okay, that was what the whole thing with Pharaoh and the plagues was. The undoing of the gods of Egypt. Each one of them was a god in Egypt. One of the Egyptian deities, frogs, lice, all that. Okay? But when you read it, it says he was to make a fiery snake. That's in English. The Hebrew word says that Moses was to make a seraph. A seraph, hear the word? Have you heard a word like that in the Bible? Yeah, that's the word. He was to make a seraph. Is a seraph a serpent? Or is a seraph a heavenly being, like an angel? Curious. Are those seraphim or cherubim? Okay, so I think this is going somewhere. Here's another example of that word that we read in our English Bibles as fiery serpent. Here is it in Isaiah. You guys might know this scripture. In the year of King Uzziah's death, I saw Yehovah. I saw Adonai sitting on a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Seraphim were standing above him. Each had 6 wings. 2 he covered his face, 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. Okay? Surrounding Yehovah in the heavenlies are these things. Okay? Now, the Hebrew word that means serpent or snake is nahash. That is not what Moses was commanded to make. He was not commanded to make a nahash. In the Numbers text that we read and the Isaiah text that we read, the word nahash is not even used. But in 2 Kings, we read about King Hezekiah. Was he a good guy or a bad guy? He was a pretty good guy. Okay, was working to bring Israel back into the worship of the one true God. Says in 2 Kings, he did what was right in Adonai's eyes, according to all his ancestor David had done. He removed the high places, smashed the pillars, cut down the Asherah poles, and he also broke in pieces the bronze serpent that Moses had made. For up to those days, Bnei Israel were burning incense to it. It was called Nahushtan. Okay, he uses the word Nahash for the serpent. So it's not used in Numbers when God says make it. It's not used in Isaiah where there's a vision of the Lord. What word is? Seraph. Okay? But in Hezekiah, he uses the word that means serpent, a bronze serpent. So there's a lot of places that you could go with this. Okay? The pole that had this bronze, whatever it was, on it, apparently Israel grabbed hold of it, kept it, and worshipped it. So there was a stick of wood that had something on it that when you look at it, you are healed. And rather than going to the one that heals you, they grabbed onto the stick of wood and began to worship it. Does that sound familiar? On an old rugged cross, la 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 la. Not that we worship it, but sometimes people do. Okay, so what I want to know is what was on that pole? What was it? Could it be that it was a heavenly being that the physical representation of it is something like a serpent? Does this relate to the fact that Satan is known as a fallen heavenly being. And when he's in the garden, what does he look like? A serpent. Okay? In addition, Yeshua likens his own death on the stake or the cross to this event with the pole with the seraph on it. Because he said in John, just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the desert, so the Son of Man must be lifted up, so that whoever believes in him may have eternal life. Now, let me just ask. All I'm doing is I'm asking. I don't know the answer. These are what's kind of in me right now. I get it that what Moses made might have looked like a Nahash, okay? Because the Nahash that was in the garden may have originally been a seraph, right? Okay? So I get that. But what does that have to do with looking at Yeshua on the cross? Well, a couple of different ideas. One, in a way, is he a heavenly being? Was the Nahash from the garden involved in the death of Yeshua? Satan, was he involved? He's involved whenever anybody dies. And remember when Yeshua looked at Judas, said, do what you got to do. Just do it now, quickly. Well, what had just happened to Judas? It says the devil entered into him. So the devil did have something to do with Yeshua's death. But what happened in the death, and more pointedly in the resurrection, is Yeshua used the devil's strategy against him, right? And turned it around so that as Paul writes, if the powers of, this isn't in your notes, I just remember it, if the powers of this world had known what they were doing when they put Yeshua to death, they never would have done it. So I think that's pretty mind-blowing, fascinating.
Also, when Yeshua was on the cross...
Hi, Esther. Hold on. Let me get you on the mic. Okay, go ahead.
When Yeshua was on the cross, he was not crucified like this, but like this. And it looks like a snake, right?
Yeah,
Just
you're right. That's very interesting. And you as an artist would recognize that.
Yep.
Okay? This is what Esther did. She said Yeshua was most likely crucified like this.
Upside down.
No, that's Peter. But you're close. Like this, not like this. Okay? That it was like that. Which may be true. But if it was, there's kind of that look of a serpent-looking thing from a distance. So, could be. Very good.
So, Pat?
Yes, who's...
Also, it's Kathy.
Hi.
Hey. So also, though, we're finding out that there's Hebrew Gospels, couldn't John 3:14 and 15 been misrepresented in serpent and said it could have been a seraph?
Man, I don't know how glad I am that you asked that. Because that means you're recognizing when something is there and it makes you go, that there may be, it may be that God is the one that is making you go, by the text and his words. Or it might be that something has happened in the translation of those words and you need to ask that question. So you're asking the could it have been question, which I would suggest, yeah, sure, could be. And the thing is, we don't have John in Hebrew. We have Matthew in Hebrew. We have some of Paul's writings, and we have Revelation in Hebrew, but we don't have Matthew in Hebrew.
But in that second volume,
Hold on. The second
Second
volume
side.
by
by
Jones.
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 Yeah, he said that it's there in Hebrew. It just has not been translated. That only Matthew has been translated, and
Right.
we're.
So let me put it a different way. I don't have it, and I've never seen it yet. So with that, I'm saying, well, I'll believe that when I get it, when I get one. Okay, I don't have any problem with believing that the whole New Testament is there in Hebrew. Yeah, that could I don't know why that wouldn't be. Except John kind of bothers me a little bit. But John was a Hebrew, so why not?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
so
one question.
okay,
So if sorry, can you hear me?
go ahead. Yep.
Okay, so if it was translated wrong and it was Saraf and not Nazach, then they created an image from a heavenly being. But Yah said, don't make any image from above or below. So he goes against himself.
Well,
If that's-
it's Mark. Take the mic.
Okay, not quite.
Okay, go ahead.
You have to. There's kind of a. I'm going to tone it down a little bit, but in my
don't need-
profession, no. In my profession, there's a.
Okay,
There's
you can't hear him. They can't hear him on Zoom, but there's a lot of bass in that mic. So come up here.
All right.
Stand right here.
At work, when we're reading the instructions, or you're taking a test, so I'm going to tone it down. It's RTFQ. Read the full question, okay? So you have to read the full text.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image of the heavens above, the earth below. Now keep reading. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them and worship them.
Right.
So if an artist makes a beautiful sculpture or a painting, you're not worshiping it. It's part of your creativity. We're created in the image of God, that he gave us the ability to create things, to build things. If we use that for his glory, it's good. If we use it for bad, it's not good. But we're not to bow down ourselves and worship them. That's where the Israelites afterwards made the mistake of grabbing that hunk of wood and worshiping that hunk of wood instead of just looking at it like they were commanded to do. That's all they were commanded to do.
Yep.
Is to look on it, not to worship it. So
Good.
yeah, you have to look at that.
Thanks, Mark. Very nice. Patricia, here, can you bring the mic over there to Patricia? Thank you.
Okay, with that serpent and on the wood,
Yes.
where they had to look upon it so they could be healed.
Yes.
In medical profession,
Yes.
whatever it is like that, do you know that they have that snake,
Yes.
that wood, to represent
Absolutely.
healing and medicine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, it's interesting, and you know what? I don't know where that originated, but you're right. They have the medical symbol is a snake wrapped around something, and who knows why that is? Something else that's interesting about this is if you get bit by a rattlesnake, what do they give you? Rattlesnake venom. That's another interesting little tidbit. Go ahead, Patty.
Okay, about the snake on the pole.
Yes.
Isn't the letter Samic equal to snake?
Yes.
Okay. Or to surround, or twist and turn, to coil,
Can you hear all?
and to,
Okay. Keep going.
okay, to twist, turn, coil, to cause death, or coil, to surround with protection. So could they have
Put the letter
carved the seraph
Samic.
as a samic, as a seraph, a protection, but the devil always turns things for evil. So then the people started worshiping the picture
Right.
rather than looking to what the letter or the picture was on the
Yeah,
pole
that is
represented.
really neat. Okay, so here's Patty brought up that the letter, the Hebrew letter Samek, in the original ancient language was a picture of a snake coiled up, and that the letter also means a protection, like you have a basket or something like that around you that's holding you and protecting you. So maybe what was on that pole was that letter, Samek, and the devil made it into something evil rather than something good, which is another very interesting insight to add.
It's Tet that was originally.
How's that?
I was thinking it was Tet that was originally the snake in the basket. So
You might be right. You might be right. I don't remember. But we'll look it up right now. Because one of us has a book. Do you have that book that you brought in earlier? I do. Do you? Well, maybe Patty will look it up. I think you're right, Kathy. I think it is that letter. Yep. So the idea is right, the letter's wrong. So that it works as well, just with a different letter. So you're going to come up and split hairs. Okay?
It's my thinking.
Go ahead.
So sometimes you have to think.
You do here.
Nesha, what's that? Neshu? Neshu.
Nehushtan.
Neshu means like a seraph, right?
No, it means bronze.
Bronze. But that's the
Or
same thing that we
fiery.
know. Bronze, there was that bronze,
Speak into the mic.
the bronze configuration.
Serpent?
Serpent.
Uh-huh.
The same Satan that left, that went to Adam, he came down from
Yes.
heaven,
Yes.
down there, and he's really threading that thread
Yes.
through us, and he's the one that is Neshu Satan.
Yes.
Satan.
Yes. Yep. Yep. Did you guys all get that? I don't know if I got it enough that I can repeat it, but yeah.
You
So
get
what
my
are
drift.
what are the hairs?
I'm saying it's like it's like a thread that is threaded up, right? He was in the most holy and holies, making music to God, right?
Okay.
And he got all his cronies. A
Okay.
third of them went
Uh-huh.
down. He entered into
Yep.
the Garden of Eden
Uh-huh.
and messed with Adam.
Yep.
Then he came back up again, and then the whole Egypt business go all
Yes.
round and round.
Sure.
When we got to this point that he is on that cross, that represents Jesus right there.
Okay.
Can you see that?
You need the mic. You need the mic. Because they can't hear it and they can't hear it.
How you thinking? What you thinking?
All I'm trying to say is I think she's trying to say that he was Satan is the red thread. And
Oh, the red thread.
yeah.
Well, the red thread really is the blood.
And then
of the
knowledge
lamb.
or something.
The dragon. He's just a dragon that just making his way into us, and he's here now trying to have
It's all
us
right.
upside
Fine.
down.
You're fine. Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah. Dante.
Hello?
Whoa. Yeah, there you are.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I want to go back and touch on the uncleanness. And you said Jesus touched the leper and that made him unclean.
No.
But didn't.
No.
Well, no.
I said
by the law.
he was willing to be made unclean. But the amazing thing was he wasn't made
but
unclean.
on that thought, so just that whole issue of the Jewish law and uncleanliness, I think Jesus or Yeshua being in our presence put him in that state, because when he died and rose again, he said, "Do not touch me, because I have not yet ascended to my Father." So he, until he died and rose again, he was in a state that he could not be in the presence of his Father.
Yes.
Until he went through.
Yep, you're on it. You hit the nail on the head. Which is why when they went up to grab him, he was like, "No. I don't want you to get this, uncleanness that I have right now." Isn't that amazing?
But that was,
sad about that.
I thought it was the reverse, because he went to his Father without being touched, and then when he came back, remember, Thomas said, "I won't believe it until I thrust my hands through the wounds."
Well, you're right. Yep.
So I think he didn't want to be touched in the same way, because we are dead, because when Adam sinned, God said, "Thou shalt surely die."
Yes.
So we've been tainted by death, and then when Christ rose again perfect and ascended into heaven, he didn't want to be touched, because he had to go, right, he had to be in the presence of his Father. When he came back, he allowed him to touch him.
Yes. Isn't this neat? And you know what? Skip Moen is going to love you guys, because he loves doing this. I think what he does not like is being with an audience or a group that doesn't interact. He doesn't just like standing there and going blah, 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 blah. He loves it, and I love it when you do this. I don't always know what you're doing. And sometimes I learn as much from you as you do from me. So, thank you.
Did Kathy found the letters? I just looked them up in the book.
The letters, what we talked about, that she said the tate is to surround the snake in the original, and the samek actually, it's supporting a tree, so
right.
Twisting slowly, so it's actually both letters. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Do you need... Okay, I'm going to let you guys go. My mind is going to be at rest when I go home tonight. And may you be blessed in your walk, in your life, in your learning, in your doing. And see you Friday night. Okay, good night, everyone. Thanks very much.